to now introduce our panel that unpacks this a lot further. And this panel is of business leaders, CEOs, who have taken the bold step to make this happen and who are all putting their money where their mouth is. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me to call up on stage our panelists today, beginning with Birju Sangrachka, who's the head commercial, corporate, and institutional banking from the Standard Chartered Bank of Kenya. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Standard Chartered Bank played a pivotal role as the global coordinator, sustainability coordinator, and mandated lead arranger for the deal. This deal is also aligned to Standard Chartered sustainability focus, which aims to connect capital at scale to sustainable development opportunities in developing markets. The bank has committed to mobilize 300 billion USD by 2030 in sustainable finance to aid the transition to net zero around the world.
Thank you for that, Zuri. Next up is Paul Russo, who is the Chief Executive Officer of KCB Group.
Kenya Commercial Bank acted as the mandated lead arranger for the transaction. KCB's approach to sustainability is a three-pronged approach. KCB looks at eco-efficiency through their green agenda, ensuring performance is looked at holistically through their sustainability reporting, and finally, through their policies and procedures, hence embedding responsible lending across their portfolio.
And from Stanbic Bank, Kenya, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Joshua Oigara, the Chief Executive Officer.
Stanbic served as an arranger on the sustainability-linked loan. Additionally, Stanbic recently released its 2022 sustainability report. In it, Stanbic has identified some key impact areas and set goals for the next 3 years, with green financing representing 10% of total book by December 2023, ensuring 30% of procurement spend is allocated to marginalized group, women, youth, SMEs by 2025, and setting up a climate risk framework by August 2023.
And from Absa Bank Kenya, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Abdi Mohammed, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director.
Absa served as an arranger on this facility. Through its focus on sustainability, Absa Bank strives to be a force for good by making a difference in its communities. Absa are deploying 6 billion Kenya shillings across sustainable investments, financing, and their operation activities to help accelerate climate transition and advance inclusive growth by 2025.
And last but certainly not least, from Safaricom PLC, ladies and gentlemen, the Chief Finance Officer, Dilip Pal.
Safaricom is the organization around which this entire transaction was built, showcasing our commitment to delivering on our ESG ambitions. As we said earlier, Dilip is putting his money where his mouth is, and we are happy to see a corporate finance chief take the lead when it comes to sustainable funding.
That is right. Ladies and gentlemen, my panel this morning, as you can see, leaders in their own right, engaging in sustainability within their organizations, and that is why they're all here today. We're going to talk about this sustainability-linked loan and indeed where we go from here a little bit deeper. Dilip, I think the best place is to begin with you. So we've seen and understood at least what that sustainability-linked loan is about. Only 15% of the targets have been met, like we heard from the UN Secretary General. So in your view, what are some of the immediate steps that can be taken by businesses to get us back on track with the goals?
So bankers are always used to come to us saying that you have so much of money in your bank accounts, give us the deposit. And things have changed. As we speak now, we are the one going to them, and I'm very happy to see all of them here today in this panel. So Let me start by saying that targets. I think we heard about target setting, right? So there is this saying, you deliver what you measure. Now, you cannot measure what you don't target, right? So we were there in the UN week, and I think one of the current consideration which is coming again and again saying that 2030, when we started in 2015, 2030 looked a long horizon. There's a lot of time to do what you need to do. Similarly, we are halfway through in 2023, looks like it's still 7 years left, right? So there is a lot can be done. But I think what is required, setting those targets, break it down by year, and make sure that you measure it. And towards that, what I feel is very important, which is what Safaricom has done extremely well, is putting this as part of the core strategy. So strategy without purpose is meaningless. So you start with the discussion of strategy, what is your purpose, what you want to do. So therefore, if it is part of your core strategy, if you have the targets, you measure it. You measure it the way you look at your financial outcome. As a CFO, if I'm looking at revenue, obviously you're looking at the profitability. But if you have the targets for sustainability, you're also looking at those achievements. I think that's something that we take a lot of pride, and all of us can do that. Third element is, to my mind, is the advocacy. In our own way, there is local, national, and international. There is a lot that can be done to make sure that the needs is understood. I think sometimes acceptance is there, but the action is still not there. So the advocacy will help to create that awareness and to create that also the people who have to take certain decisions. Then I will say digital transformation for the business. I think this is a buzzword. Everybody is doing digital transformation. And this area is also, there is no end, there is no finishing line. I think we need to just continue doing what we are doing. And there are challenges in this area. But digital transformation will ensure that you reduce waste, you bring in efficiency, and therefore there is a lot, the business, you make business more sustainable. And last but not the least is what we are doing today. I think report, audit, validation, all goes a long way in terms of building credibility. You know what, the stakeholders can trust you when you see this report and which are audited. And obviously when it's audited, it has got a lot more credentials. So I would say good progress, but a lot can be done. I think those who are here in this room, I think many of you are part of that. But can you make sure that the organization is actually within the organization is embedded in a way you're not looking at sustainability differently than running the business the way you do, which is what drives Safaricom.
Yeah, thanks for that. At the core and being purpose-led and reporting, which I always say is a very vulnerable moment for an organization. You say, these are the challenges, these are the goals we set, and this is how we have, the achievements we've made towards performing those. So sustainable finance, that's what we're hearing. It is the game changer. Birju, tell us what the sustainability finance market looks like. And while you do that, there is sustainable financing, there's green financing, there's sustainability-linked bonds, there's ESG bonds. So as you break that down for us, also just tell us what the market for this looks like.
First, good morning all, and thank you to Safaricom and the board for having us here today. The other thing is, Yvonne, thank you. We were at an event last week where you paneled, and you have no paper today, so thank you.
I'm getting better at it.
I will take it back to my seat.
Oh, good, thank you.
But so let's take a step back. I can give you the ChatGPT version of what sustainable finance is. But fundamentally, you have financial goals and you have ESG goals. And every company or business will look at it potentially separately. Sustainable finance seeks to tie the two together and have an incentive to tie the two together. So, you have traditional finance and then you have sustainable finance. Sustainable finance then comes in and sort of tries to tie the two and has an incentive or a penalty for not doing what you say you're going to do. Within sustainable finance, you think about the purpose of sustainable finance. It's to drive economic development, but at the same time address challenges like inequality climate change, etc. And within that, then you have tools. You have tools, and these are the products we call sustainable loans, sustainable linked loans, sustainable bonds, green bonds, blue bonds. I mean, you can go on and on and on. But remember, there's only two things at the bottom of every sustainable finance. It's either activity-based or it's behavior-based. And what that means, so take a green bond or a green loan. Activity-based means it is the proceeds of the financing are used to directly fund a green project, so a solar plant, renewable energy, etc. Behavior-based, and this is now where the sustainability-linked loan comes in, is it rewards or penalizes a company for doing what they set out to do in their ESG journey. In Safaricom's SLL case, sustainability-linked loan case, they're looking at things like digital inclusion, reducing the amount of emissions in the network. It's the financing is tied to them achieving what they set out themselves to achieve. And we can go on. I mean, some of it is a little bit more nuanced in the sense that we did a very large transaction in the Middle East where the company's objective was primarily to get more women on their board. And what they said is, if we don't do it, you penalize us by charging us more. So they're willing to do that, and warts and all show how well or how badly they're doing. And then the last one is Scope 3 emissions. So every company deals with Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, and they're more easy to deal with because you can control them to an extent. Scope 3 is your supply chain, and 70% of your emissions are coming from your supply chain. And if there's a way we can do, say, supply chain financing as financiers that help companies, suppliers, alleviate some of their carbon emissions, electric vehicles, etc., then you start dealing with Scope 3 emissions. So again, there's very many ways to cut sustainable finance. And why we're excited as Standard Chartered is because it is one area where, finance is a very boring place. There's very little innovation in finance. but it allows us to innovate as best as we can.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to hear and see 15 billion shillings that has been put together by all of you who are here on this stage today. The issue of access is one, whether you're talking about financing in general or particularly sustainable financing. Joshua, how do we make this work for African markets, sustainable financing?
Thank you very much, Yvonne. First is to thank Peter. I've been following this journey for a long time, and the chair since 2011. But let me say that the questions, and Dr. Ojo mentioned it very clearly, it's not a question about lack of financing. There's a lot of, and it's good to have the financials here, because sometimes a lot of Controllians speak a lot of stuff that they don't fund from financing for this project. So all of us seated here work very collectively, and I must thank Safaricom for reimagining what is possible from the lenders, from financiers. It's not a question of capital. I mean, as a bank like Standard Bank and us have got $1 trillion shillings available for sustainable lending on the continent. That's more than $5-6 billion. But you need people to reimagine the ambition, correct? What kind of actions you want to do in the vision, and the courage to have the business run in a manner that's sustainable. That is what the lack is. So the kind of contrary statements you get, Yvonne, are always like, financials are not ready, correct? But you're not going to ask financial to tell you, we are available. So we thank Safaricom for catalyzing this kind of ambition and showing what is possible. It's significant, correct? People talk about the complexity of structuring. The team that is available here can structure any kind of structure that you need. And a lot of people misunderstand that sustainable finance is about climate change. A lot of it is about your own energizing your business, changing your profile, classing your customers, getting your products. That's how you build sustainability in your own DNA of your organization. And I think those kind of way you must demystify the model. So when Antonio Guterres talks about the gap is about the envisioning, is about the ambition set. Generally, capital flows to the milestones that are being set. So the challenge is not going to be the financials, actually. And so we salute, and Safaricom has been this eclectic catalyst, and always say, a convener that is able to driving this journey. And that's why for us, we launched a sustainability report just a few weeks back. So my answer is that of the $194 billion, that availability will arise on the continent, no doubt. What we lack is to have more people coming to the table and say, this is what we want in our business. And business has a bigger role to play. And actually the challenge for Peter is not about looking in the past. Because 12 years later, you can see the dreams of 2011 the scaling of the business. We're going through massive crises on the continent. You know, there's a COVID challenge, the global geopolitical challenges we face, climate change issues we face, but suddenly you're building through those kind of challenges to grow and progress. So what I would say in summary is that as a team, and many times it's very easy to see that many lenders and this group can come together to structure any kind of transaction that you need to build your enterprise, to go towards sustainable goals. And that's what we can assure. So the concern I want to leave you, listening to us today, is not that you have, lenders are always ready to migrate. And that's why a lot of our resources now are committed to supporting Safaricom and the team towards their ambitions. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Joshua, because you talk about ambition. You say financing is there, but now it's also up to, the organizations to now say, how can we use this to power our organizations towards the future? And that's what, I want to hear from you, Paul. Then for those who are here and watching us both here and online, what are you looking for in investors and stakeholders when it comes to, sustainable financing? What will you be looking for, Paul? It's on. It's on. Okay,
thank you. Allow me to say two things before I answer that question. One is to thank Peter and the team. Peter, I know you don't like my tie, but it's fine. It's okay. And the second question is, the second point is to thank the chairman of Safaricom, and Joshua, who are the teams that led the setup of the sustainable agenda for KCB. So mine is actually sitting here is to demonstrate more ambition rather than setting to do anything. So thank you for the tailwinds. I think it's always important to do that. I think there'll be three pillars that I would say I would look at. And the first pillar, I bracket that around people, technology, and partnership. The second pillar is around, in my view, governance, policy, and process. And I would say the third one is the transparency and reporting. If you get those right as an institution, I think you can have a meaningful conversation, in my view, with a financier. And let me just try quickly and break down what I mean with that. I think you look at the credibility of the people that are running that institution and how intentional they are in terms of driving a purpose for that. So in all the discussions we've had today earlier on, you can see an alignment on people, both board and management of Safaricom, are being intentional about sustainability. Therefore, you'll have to look at that. The second bit is deploying technology and investments to be able to bring to life that sustainability. Again, very real for Safaricom. It has to be real for all of us. But the third one, and Yvonne, I think you put it correctly, in that pillar, is you can't do it alone. So how do you mobilize? How do you become the catalyst to bring everybody else, not just to try and push for a finish, and as you say, there's no finish, but how do you get people to take the first step? I think if you go look at the team that is working on the UN Global Impact, the question is, why are we few in that team? And yet there's so many corporates. So we've got to collectively work together, more like in the Bible, convert one at a time. And that is about that partnership element. Then you've got the second pillar is about governance, both policy and process. It's one thing to have governance, but it's another thing to just put in processes and you follow that. Anchoring that both on how your boards are set up and how you comply. And the third of that pillar, as I said, is transparency and reporting. And Peter said, opening up yourself to a third party to be able to attest and to be able to give an independent view, because bankers have a habit of saying, I see your numbers, but let me see another person's opinion, and let me just take it to that person. So I'd put it in those probably three buckets, or there about 5 or so points. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you say that in terms of organizations as well. So SMEs have been identified as the biggest drivers of growth, especially building back better from the COVID-19 pandemic. And I just want to hear from you, Abdi, on SMEs and how they can make themselves attractive for sustainable financing. What do they need to do? Because this is a space also in which you are very passionate about.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, and thank you, Peter, for the invite. Great story, great conversation. When I heard about the purpose-led, it's echoes of what we discuss in APSA all the time as well. And the chief guest, when she spoke, used a very powerful word, which is ecosystem. And this is an ecosystem. It's about partnership. It's about working together. And I think the era when everybody did what they do within their verticals and tried to combine at the top is gone. I think we are in an era of partnership and working together. I think, Yvonne, coming back to the question, we talk about the large, complex deals like the one we've just done with Safaricom that are sustainability linked. But increasingly, the world is also looking about solving the problem on a wider scale. And there are many, many SMEs out there in Africa, in our own country, that are very much focused in this journey that we are on and how we achieve it. And in that respect, there are a number of aspects that you look at. One is really just awareness, education, and support. And from an APSA perspective, and I've seen many of the partners in the market do the same as well. We spend a lot of time on that partnership and working together and creating awareness and working across, a number of partners. The other one is the funding itself. The likes of Safaricom, we sometimes queue up to fund Safaricom, right? But the ordinary SME that is out there requires support in terms of just preparing their case, preparing their business case to ensure that they are ready for funding and support. And, the experience we've had is there is a lot of willingness. I sit on the UN Global Compact board, and one of the areas that Judy and the team are looking at is how to have more SMEs come into that as well, and how we ensure we are partnering across a much wider base of businesses, just rather than just a few corporates. So the way I'll summarize it, Yvonne, is I know there is a lot to be done. We had the General Secretary's, speech on the SDGs, but, Kenya has also made a lot of progress. The Global Compact chapter that we have in Kenya is the best in Africa in terms of membership, in terms of drive and what we are doing there. And there is a lot of good progress that is being made. But I think the SME sector is going to be really central to the answer that we provide. And it's a combination of funding, ensuring that the funding is being provided at the right cost, because it has to be sustainable for the SME as well, and technology. And this is where what Safaricom is doing, what the banks are doing, all the fintech community that we work with in this country, all comes together because it provides you with the reach so that you're able to reach more customers. It also provides you with the right cost structure that makes it sustainable so that all the partners within the ecosystem find that from their own profit and financials perspective, it is sustainable. So that's what we have to work on.
Indeed, that's very important. I want to just remind all of you that keep your questions, comments at hand. We'll be coming to that in a moment. For those of you who are joining us online, please go on to menti.com. That's menti.com. Use the code 74005096. That's 7400 5096. Drop your questions or comments. We'll be coming to that in a moment. Abdi, you've talked about making sure that this is available to the SMEs. So Birju, let's get into that. How do organizations then access this sustainable linked loan? And what do you think made Safaricom a good partner for this?
So let me start with the second question first. So, everyone said it. Safaricom is a beacon for the country. the customer base is a large proportion of the population. And if Safaricom does something, they have the ability to have a catalytic effect on large portions of society. So that's a given. Quick story. 2007 was a very exciting time for this country. I'm not talking about the disputed election. What I'm talking about is two very material things happened. One, Safaricom talks about quite a lot, which is the M-Pesa launch, and we all know how that went. The second one is the eastern seaboard of Africa didn't have any submarine fiber, and we all relied on satellite. I was part of a team that advised on the team's cable that came in, and we didn't know whether it would sell. The only data we had was Philippines and India to show data usage before and after a cable came in. Safaricom had the courage to take a large punt in that, an equity stake in that project, and the rest is history. Silicon Savannah, the fintechs, everything that's come up. In fact, the chair was also involved in that in his day job in that project many years ago. But that's the ethos of Safaricom. They're willing to take courageous bets. Some will work, some won't. But they've been quite lucky. Everything seems to be working out for them. But that's why we like it. We like it because you can try new stuff with Safaricom. They will come in with an objective mind. And within their organization, they make it work. And when they don't, they're very open. You can see in the sustainability reports over the last 12 years, they're very open to say, this hasn't worked, we'll course correct. We like Safaricom in that regard.
Okay.
So that was... Thank you. The first question, sorry, if you just want to just...
So, which is how we get access to this loan.
Okay, so everyone's talked about it in different shapes and forms. It's mindset, it's intent, and it's execution. Mindset being, as a company, first, you've got to say, what do I want to do? And it's simple. Do I want to do more good, or do I want to do less harm? Obviously, you want to do both. More good means things like let's move to, let's have more women in our workforce, etc. Let's reduce inequality. Do less harm is tackle emissions, for example. So the mindset has to be there from a company. Second one is intent, and everybody here again talked about it. Transparency. Are you willing to say, I am where I am. I'm in a pretty bad shape right now. I need to do X, Y, and Z to get better. So, and we will be held accountable to it. So transparency and accountability. That's the intent. And the last piece is execution. How are you going to go about doing this? And that's where now the SLLs or the sustainable finance comes in, and you partner with organizations like the ones represented here in this room as well to deliver that for you. Finance is an output, right? If you get the inputs right, the output will follow.
Indeed, that's an interesting one. Again, a reminder, menti.com. Log on to that. It's 7400 50 96. That's the code. And then we can, get this understanding a little bit better. And it's, like you said, it's inputs and what's your purpose and intent. And the team at the UN Global Compact also helps with just refining that then perhaps enables organizations to then come to you and say, okay, this is what we want to do. And this is the support that we need with this sustainability-linked loan. All of you sitting here are champions of sustainability in your own right. So I just want to take this moment to understand what this is, because today we're talking about sustainability, not just for Safaricom, but for Safaricom's partners, which you are. So let me start with you, Paul, in terms of your sustainability. Congratulations, by the way. KCB was named Best Bank in Sustainable Finance by the Kenya Bankers Association. That was last year. Well done. So what are some of the challenges and lessons you've learned along the way?
No, thank you. And it was good that I mentioned Chairman.
You did well to do that, yeah.
As well as Joshua, because that weight is down to the work that was done 14 years ago. I think first we find ourselves, at a certain point with institutions that have history. So there is an entry point at any time. So you will have legacy, particularly banks. So you'll see that we've committed about greening the book, but you find yourself at a certain point. You've got to make a bold move to cut it off, saying, I'll deal with the backlog, which means going back and greening that book, but I'm also going to be intentional about what I book downstairs. Now that, unless the leaders in this room believe otherwise, that is a big challenge. Because at the end of the day, they still push for profitability, and how do you balance that delicate? And that's why we say it's not one or the other, it's both. So how do you balance that and be intentional about that? And because I come from the human capital point of view, how do you embed that in performance management? Because you're sending people out there with certain objectives and deliverables. And then you've got this commitment that you've made at the leadership point of view, which brings me to the point of transforming culture. Aligning the entire institution is a big challenge. And for me, I actually think it's one single most big challenge. As we said earlier on, getting money to do it, getting subject matter experts to do it can be a bit of a challenge, but we've got fairly good subject matter experts in this country and in the region that we operate in. It is aligning the institution and being intentional about it, and which brings in the culture element.
Abdi, the organization you lead aims to be a driver for good in the communities you serve. What change do you purpose to drive in the next few years?
I think it starts, first of all, with embedding this into the purpose. So the organizational purpose needs to have this as a very central point of view. I think banks are coming from a time when sustainability was, there was the financial reporting, your financial performance, and then you had appendices which had your sustainability agenda. And we are now moving to a point where it's a critical part of the strategy. And for us, we're driving, as you mentioned earlier, the whole SME agenda. There is a gender component there as well. So women-led SMEs is a big piece of what we are working on. The whole climate agenda, not just in terms of working with the large corporates like Safaricom, but also working with a lot of players that are involved in solutions that are off-grid, clean energy, and so on. And there's a lot of work that we are doing in that space as well. There are internal targets around gender balance in the board, in the executive, and overall in the bank, which is currently 50-50, and we're working on that as well. So there is a lot to be done. I feel that some progress has been made, and we should not lose sight of that. In fact, the debate we were having in the UN Global Compact the other day is, yes, there is the global concerns around where we are on the SDGs, but we should have data that is a lot more specific to us locally as well, so that when we are doing something well, we actually celebrate it and put it out there. And I think the work Safaricom has done in this space is really worth celebrating and really quite inspiring.
Thanks for that, Abdi. And like you mentioned, sustainability reporting is one of those ways. Joshua, you recently launched your sustainability report, and you've identified, digital, technology as an avenue to advance opportunities. Why?
So let me say, Yvonne, maybe just to answer the question differently. So we are following in the footsteps of Safaricom 12 years ago. So we respect the value of the anchor. The first launch we did just this year. But I want to say just two things which are important for us. How do we reflect? And this is a question that Ojo you raised earlier. The challenge we face on the continent, really, for us, is less ambitions. I mean, we celebrate less ambitions. So when I see Peter saying 2025, we're becoming a sustainable tech company, it looks short. But sometimes we over-celebrate in the continent, smaller objects, smaller dreams. And that's always the crisis. And I know it may not sound right, but that's exactly the message we send on the Africa Climate Summit. You need much more ambition. So when you set up bigger dreams, and I'm sure they worry Peter every single time, 2025 is not less than 30 months from today. But ultimately, it's better to have a bigger ambition because positivity drives progress. And sustainability has no end at the end of the day. So the question is, how well do you get? So even for entrepreneurs that everybody was talking about, many times what we lack is not entrepreneurs that are convicted and passionate to change their enterprise. They're always looking for something. And the challenge you always see in sustainability is there's always many problems, many reasons, many excuses. And I must salute the board and the management of Safaricom for driving and remaining the course. This is how you bring in more partners in this engagement for sustainability for us. So we said two things for the youth. And actually our youth in Kenya are quite strange. They are more convicted about change and impact than anyone else in the world. Than anyone else. So generally it is more of my older generation that is now having problems. If you think about our youth everywhere, the sway for positivity, for change, and obviously Safaricom is the best to say a lot of your clients that you have, majority of them are young people in our country and across the region. So as a Pan-African bank, what I would say for us, we believe the interconnectedness that comes. Our young people can be able to have opportunities today to have new markets, new opportunities across many of our continents, new connections. That's how you do trade. That's how you raise positivity. It creates value. And so, Yvonne, that's one way of building it. And the more you create capabilities, the more you build sustainable enterprises. But you must have the vision and ambition. And this is very difficult. So the challenge is not always the large organizations. And obviously, it's not less for Peter because there's a snowball effect.
Yeah.
The way I see the change happening is not so many small steps. There is a catalytic point where there is an exponential point. So the more effort, like the bond or the kind of loan we have organized today, Yvonne, is about how do we bring in how many SMEs and how many young people get touched across the network for Safaricom ecosystem. They may be the largest on the country. So even what Abdi mentioned about this is already a solution for that in the market. Are they ready? Very few of them will be ready. And I think this, Ojo, is a bigger question across the country. When you see all markets from Luanda to Deira to Lagos, this is always the problem we face. So finally, we choose that interconnectedness. They have positive sway. And then finally, if you look at the youth generally in our markets, technology is the only way to build a sustainable engagement and democratize access for value for everyone, especially this generation. So that's why we see that you co-create, you coexist. So we have the traditional bank that runs. But when I think about this decade, I think this is the decade when tech will levelize, democratize access to value for every single person on the continent. That's why we chose Stage to Change.
Can you have a round of applause for that? Because I think that's really important in terms of technology and democratizing access to funds. And Dilip, as we've got a few minutes left, and I'll come to your questions in a moment. So tell us about how you're leveraging technology to advance access, and how that is also being used to perhaps match needs to access for sustainable financing.
Yeah, so just before that, I wanted to say that I think there is a bit of a paradox here. Paradox in terms of you hear those billions and trillions of money available, yet the money is actually not available. If you are there in the UN, every single panel, I thought I'm just in a CFO coalition, but the panel that everywhere I'm attending, it's talking about affordable finance for climate change. That's a big topic. So I think paradox is here. One, Safaricom, yes, catalyst, but will not be enough. So you need more of that, and how that will happen. I think I will just summarize the way. First of all, what we did for our sustainability linked loan, I think we moved away from a green bond, which is investment linked, to a more on performance driven, the KPI driven, because KPIs are much easier, that that you are focusing on that rather than saying, okay, I'm going to invest here. That KPI you may not achieve that KPI. So for us, I think important thing in the whole technology space was the digital inclusion, which is one of the 3 KPIs that we agreed. And for us, it's fundamental. It's what we are driving as a company in terms of the digital access to the mass, right? Which is now how that can happen. So you need to have more of smartphone, more of 4G devices. We have 2/3 of our phones are still 2G phones, right? Yes. So for us, we said that, okay, how can we drive that? So one of our KPIs is to make sure that in our network, the number of 2G devices go up. I think there are other areas that are important, and I think we can take that away. One, my friend Biju mentioned it, I think finance is not very innovative. And especially in the credit side, we still try to remain in that space. So I think in terms of product development, in terms of, and being more deliberate about taking a little bit of risk. For those of you who are here, we could have probably borrowed twice or thrice of that what you have borrowed, because all of them were willing to pay us more money. But the question is, will they do it for everyone else? Because one Safaricom cannot change the equation. So that's the third is the incentives. No matter what you say, incentives drives performance, incentive drives target, incentive drives those. So what are the incentives coming in the way? Sustainability linked loan has an embedded incentive, which is interest. As a CFO, I like it, because then I can say, we are going to be spending less on interest, but then we are focusing on the right thing, on the KPIs that you need to achieve. I think I will leave it there, saying how does the risk appetite, innovation, and making sure that it just doesn't remain only with the Safaricom one big size sustainability linked loan. It can be given to others as well, and we become the catalyst.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks for that. I want to get some questions, comments. I also have a few on menti.com, but I want to start in the room. Anyone in the room? Questions, comments? I can come down to you. All right, let me go to Menti first while you get that. So it's menti.com. Here is a question. And this is an interesting one. We now have United Nations initiative called Football for the Goals, aiming to promote SDGs through football. How might we partner with organizations present here today? And I think you talked to this, Joshua, about the youth involvement in helping to realize the 2030 agenda within all the organizations present today. Perhaps the question can also be answered from the floor as well. I know there's quite a bit of work that's been done with Chapadimba, and in that respect, anyone looking to answer that? We could, yes, go ahead, Paul. No, it's fine, it's on.
The typical Kenyan politician statement. I think, and you mentioned Chapadimba. I think just...
Okay, hang on a second. Let me get
you. Can
let me get you another mic. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, that's better.
Yes.
You can imagine a mic that is not working plus my voice. Because, yeah, I think you started everyone by mentioning Chapadimba, but I just wanted to use KCB as an example.
Yeah.
That you can actually use sports to make impact. Starting from yesterday, where KCB volleyball team was actually the national champions.
Yes.
As it's yesterday, it's Africa champions.
Congratulations.
Its intention to all those players employed by KCB, they are paid the same day as KCB staff, and facilitated fully in all those international competitions to represent the country. And I'll come and tie up the entire sports space for sustainability. I think the football team at the moment must be number 4 in the league. The rugby team is obviously the champions. There are some of you might support Cabras, I'm sorry. The leading... chess is actually the number 1 and represents Kenya across board. And therefore, it's institutionalized. But here is how I would break down the impact. Most of these players are from the lower areas in this country. Whether you talk about Mathare, Huruma, Kibera. Other than just earning a living to keep the rest, their families and relatives in place, the biggest impact is to the kids that are growing in the areas and in the lives of growing. I think we underestimate that impact, that they can wake up in the morning, have a place to apply their skills, different from those of us who put on our ties, put food on the table, and therefore provide that inspiration to the rest of the people. I think that is one reason why as corporates we must come to the table. The second one is how we build talent and position Kenya. Now, there's Talanta Hela. It's fantastic from a concept perspective. To make that realized, we have to come together as corporates, work with government of Kenya to help those kids from the lowest of the level, to commercialize their skills. I think for me, that's how I see that space coming through.
Indeed. And some of the good work that's being done, like you say, in just providing livelihoods and dignified livelihoods, which is, one of the many goals that we have set for ourselves. Yes, Peter, would you like to add something?
Just wanted to add to Paul's comment about the impact of sport. So Safaricom has been involved with sports from the very beginning. 1.4 billion Kenya shillings spent. We go across all sports. But the biggest reason, and I just want to echo what Paul has said, is sports is the biggest passion point for Kenyans. In particular, football, because of the base it touches on, is so important. I know we paused because of COVID, you couldn't run contact sports, but going back and running Chapadimba and seeing some of those finals both in Western but also in Nyanza recently, it's amazing the impact you create in terms of passion, in terms of discovering talent, in terms of showcasing, especially in the current world where youth are facing so many challenges and dilemmas. Actually occupying them, as Paul is saying, is so important. The second thing we've done is to overlay technology, to start saying we can actually put the same technology that's being used in the Premiership in the UK, especially at those finals piloting there, and actually we've started to discover talent. There's a lady who runs faster than your average man. So if there are scouts from abroad, you can give them this data that says you don't have to come and watch.
Yeah.
Here are the set of talent that we are discovering from all the work that we are doing. And there's about 40,000+ kids who are going to be between 16 and 20 who are going to be involved in this. And if you think about 5 years later, we'll create a pipeline of talent in the same way that we have in athletics that can be showcased at a global level.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Peter. And those smart jerseys are apparently doing quite some things. It's able to, identify talent. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
For me, I think I might have to chew this as well. For me, it's about a greater purpose for an organization. And in the case of Safaricom, Safaricom has a very, very important place in the hearts and minds of Kenyans. So bringing back Chapadimba was, distributing hope. It was getting people to feel the love for us again. And in so doing, you give a lot of opportunity to many people about what they can do with themselves. Hope is a very, very, very important thing. And many times we don't really look at it from a business strategic point of view. But hope is so important to uplifting people's lives, giving them purpose. So if it may be football with us, it may be netball, it may be another sport, it may be cricket. It's about us getting and reaching down to those below us and lifting them higher.
Indeed, thank you very
Yvonne,
much.
just allow me to make one
Mr.
comment on
Chairman.
this, Yvonne.
Yes.
Just to bring it back into what Dilip asked.
Yeah.
We can learn a lot from sports on how enterprise can amend itself to be deliberate and intentional in terms of sustainable financing. I mean, those sports teams, those individuals, they come out from places with less capabilities, but they aim to win a league. They change their model. They wake up every morning. They're very deliberate. They believe it. And that's what change happens. So this gap, the financing gap, the model must reorganize itself. Otherwise, if the young person doesn't wake up to come and do the sport, he won't be champion.
That's right.
And that is the gap that we must feel, that intentionality and belief, or the ambition you said, is actually what drives everybody else towards the ambition for sustainability. That's how you get funding. What tends to happen generally is that the concern I get even in the summits, which I've raised a lot back, is no one wants to do the force, no one wants to do the action, no one has an ambition. Funds can't flow for no action. The same way the sports. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the sportsman coming in. And it's important to have that correlation, that snowball effect is what you need to interconnect funding.
Action and purpose. Yes. Let's have lady in the front row.
Good morning. My name is Susan Jorge. My question's to you, Joshua. One of the biggest things I hear when it comes to sustainability is companies don't want to partner because of competition. Yeah, the creative license you would steal from each other, but you are here demonstrated as partners who've come together to to put a loan together? We know partnership is important for sustainability. What would you say to not just the banking industry, but other captains of industry who can come together like you have, and that competition isn't an issue?
I think there's just two gaps, and good to see our leaders in the room with Judy and Habil from the industry, and also from the, I think from the UN Global Compact. It's important that actually I don't believe that individually, Peter spoke about it, you can drive a business to create transformation and breakthrough alone. It's a lose-lose game. I think that's proven. What you like are leaders who are convicted about an ambition and vision. That's what lacks. And so when you look at this from the UN Global Compact or from the Kenya bankers, we do a lot of things very collaboratively. We don't believe that competition. There are areas we compete very viciously. But in the long run, the cooperations that we need to put together is what really matters. And seeing all of us here speaking together with Dilip and Peter just demonstrates. I don't know anyone else. So I think the small mind, if I use that, of fighting a lone ranger game is probably last century. So the challenge for the people out there, if the leaders and captains of industry are driving this positioning and making breakthrough, I don't know what other lessons you need to. This is an experience. And I push back very hard because I've seen, we struggle getting members today. I think we have more than 2,500 members, if I'm not wrong, Judy, where we are. I'm not very sure on the UN Global Compact. I'm not sure how far we are. But that's really the challenge, I think, from what we see. But I think there are more members now. I think we have the biggest member organizations on the continent. Am I right? I think we are, as Kenya, as the Kenyan chapter. So that shows you about the probability. And Abdi, you sit on the board, so you actually know the details. Yeah. So that's what I will say for themselves. And easily then to bring in more allies from tech, from financiers, from partners, from government, from policy. That is the model for generations today. So I think the leaders are doing it. What I will say is that if you want to learn, this team is always available. Join the groups which are here. And maybe, Abdi, you can make a comment actually on the Global Compact.
Yeah, I think just to add a little bit there, I think from a banking sector perspective, that element of collaboration, to the extent allowed, is something that we've done quite well. And I think there is something to be said there in terms of how we do that right across the corporate world. But I think the Global Compact and the journey that Kenya is on, there is still a lot to be done. I think yesterday we had a discussion around how do we increase the membership, how do we get this across to more members, etc. But it's really been a very, very good journey. And I think the challenge for us is to say, yes, each individual entity has what it does within its company, but for us to really achieve that breakthrough transformation, it has to be collaborative, and it has to be done across industry and across, from a competitor perspective. So it's a really good point you make, and I hope a bunch of bankers sitting here talking about sustainability, talking about collaboration, does help move that story forward.
It absolutely does. I mean, I think just you all being here and taking part in this sustainability-linked loan is example itself, and will then cascade, because people also want to emulate, and they act by seeing this happening. And so thank you, gentlemen, for your leadership in this, and we look forward to the impact that this sustainability-linked loan will have on that. Ladies and gentlemen, let's please give them a warm round of applause as they take their seats.